And she's not
And
saying
we are
anything.
live. Enjoy.
Okay, thanks. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining today's webinar, Serious Books for Serious Readers. My name is Fred Nachbaur, and I will be the moderator for the event. We have a stellar lineup of panelists to help us unpack the meaning behind serious books, discuss how they are marketed and sold, and explore ways we can collaborate on building a community of readers for these publications about which we feel so passionate. I'm excited that we are able to bring in the perspective of an independent bookseller, a sales rep, a major distributor, and a university press representative. And so we're talking beyond our own UP community and the AAUP community, which is very exciting and was one of the goals that we had for the UP Week task force. Before I introduce the speakers, let me go over a few guidelines to help make this session run smoothly. I will be asking individual panelists specific questions, but any one of them is free to contribute. Because we are online, give people time to finish their thoughts before jumping in. We want to make sure there aren't a lot of overlapping voices, making it difficult to decipher what is being said. Listeners can participate with the Twitter hashtag, hashtag UP Week, or type questions in the chat box. And then after the general Q&A is done, I'll open it up to the audience for questions. So now I'm going to introduce, I'm going to allow the panelists to introduce themselves. First off, we have Jeff Deutsch from Seminary Co-op. Jeff, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Great, thank you. My name is Jeff Deutsch. I'm the director of Seminary Co-op Bookstores and 57th Street Books in Chicago, Illinois, one of the premier academic bookstores in the country. Prior to my position here, I supported bookstores at Stanford University as well as the University of California, Berkeley, and have been a bookseller for over 20 years. I believe that Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass should be required reading for all of humanity.
Thank you, Jeff. Brady Dyer from University of Texas Press.
Hi, I'm Brady Dyer from UT Press. I am the marketing and communications manager. I've been here for about 4.5 years, close to 5, and I come from outside of the publishing world. My background is actually in museums, where I did marketing and PR, and also worked on publications from the other side. So.
Great. Thanks, Brady. Next up is Lanora Haradon. She's the Midwest rep for MIT, Princeton, and Yale.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. I am Lanora Haradon. I am the Midwest representative for MIT Press, Princeton University Press, and Yale University Press. However, most of my time has been spent on the trade bookselling side. So I started at Borders. I've worked for Politics and Prose in Washington, D.C. I worked for the Venerable Harry W. Schwartz bookstores in the Milwaukee area until they closed, and actually owned my own bookstore for quite a while before moving over to the sales rep side.
Thank you, Lenora. And finally, we have Kurt Hettler from Ingram Academic Services.
Hi, yeah, Kurt Hettler here. I'm the director of Ingram Academic Services. I've been at the Ingram Content Group for all of 2.5 months right now. But prior to that time, I was at Oxford University Press for over 25 years. Hate to say that number. Used to be, for the last 8 years, the director of Publisher Services. So we handled print and electronic distribution for mainly university presses. And then half of what I did was with the University Press Scholarship Online platform, which was entirely devoted to university presses. So really, my entire publishing career has been either working for a university press or working with university presses.
Great. Thanks, and welcome to everyone. I'm glad you're able to join us today. So the first question is, what do we mean by serious books? And I'll kick it off by giving my definition. Serious books can mean different things. And to me, they mean books written by scholars that tackle a specific subject in depth. These are books that he or she may have been working on for years and have deeply investigated the topic. It can mean books like those from Fordham, including one in which the author used documentary techniques to explore the history and culture of how an abandoned waterfront in Brooklyn was transformed into a state park, or, for instance, an anthropological study of gay dads and the meaning of kinship in 5 different places across the US, based on 10 years of empirical research. These books might be used by researchers, but they cross over into a trade market because their topic resonates with people outside the academy. What also makes them serious is that they have been peer-reviewed by external readers and their comments have been incorporated into the final manuscript. These are books that have been vetted. So for all of these reasons, I think this contributes to making them serious books. So let me turn it over to any one of the panelists who would like to join in.
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, I mean, for me, I think serious books are, you know, simply put, books that go on simple entertainment. Not that there's anything wrong with reading a romance novel from time to time, but, you know, from anything from a sort of narrowly focused monograph through, you know, one of those crossover titles we all talk about that's academic, but, you know, has an appeal to a more general audience, and then to general trade books that are written by serious scholars or journalists that focus on a topic of importance. It could be great literature, it could be politics, it could be current affairs, history.
Great, thanks, Kurt.
Right, Kurt, I'll go next. I agree with you on that, and I think serious books can be scholarly or trade, and for the tradier ones, I think it has to do with the tone. The author, you know, is presenting the reader with something to consider, follow an argument, or just really give it some thought, whether it's a concern or a question. And when you finish it, you feel enlightened or your perspective has changed. For me, the book that I thought of was Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Great. Great choice.
Oh, I can go next. I like to be a little incendiary maybe, but sometimes for me it's better to describe something by what it's not. And since I was on the trade side for so long, on the commercial trade publishing side, publishing seems to be focusing, at least in regards to nonfiction, on books about the ideas in two categories. And I see them as like they're either fake thought leaders created from social media, or they're just synthesizing actual research into a digestible format that's meant to serve as a platform for the author's brand. University presses, I think, are serious because they're all serious, and they have what I call the origin idea. The books are serious in that they offer actual research and the source of the idea. University press brings those ideas to the world and to readers across the sphere of knowledge and really enrich the human conversation.
Great.
Good. I think I'd like to add, just briefly, I agree with just about everything that's been said. Particularly appreciate Brady's comment on the thoughtfulness. I also think serious can mean a lot of things, including rigorous or challenging or sober, and often means all of those things at once. And when I think of university presses specifically and their role in the creation of serious books, the common quality is that they're enduring. These are books that have a much longer shelf life than the average title.
Great, great. I think those are all good things. And of course, you know, serious books help us deal with things that are happening around us every day, and what's going on in the current environment, and how we're all kind of dealing with that. So I think university press books can help us put things into perspective and hopefully move forward when we're dealing with these things. But I won't go into politics. That's a totally different seminar. So the first question is for Brady. Mm-hmm. Brady, how do university presses distinguish trade books versus monographs?
Yeah, so generally speaking, and for our purposes today, I'll just sort of briefly give a definition. Monographs are scholarly. They're written by academics. They present new research on a topic in a particular discipline. You know, often the topic has a rather narrow focus. They're written for a particular academic audience, which is other scholars or students within the discipline or the related field. Some monographs that are written, that are more accessibly written, they often find a crossover general audience. That is definitely possible with more serious monographs. Trade books, much broader. For us, trade subjects are music, food, film. They fit sort of into existing bookstore categories. Written by non-academics, a writer or a journalist, for a general audience. The print runs are a lot higher, and a lot of marketing dollars go behind the trade books because the audience is not so specific. And then price is a factor too. Prices are lower and remain competitive based on other comp books in the market.
All right, great. Thanks, Brady. From Fordham's perspective, our biggest trade list is the regional list. We do this imprint called Empire State Editions, and they tend to branch out to a wider audience, and they're not written primarily by scholars. Most of them aren't. We do have a few that are, and fortunately, New York has a market outside New York, so those books tend to do well for us. So that's the trade list for us. Does anyone else want to chime in about trade versus monograph?
So Fred, I'm just wondering, when you're looking at trade versus what we often call academic trade, that sort of crossover title that Brady was mentioning before, how do you make that determination? What do you rely on to make that determination?
You mean what makes it a trade versus an academic trade?
Right, exactly. Instead of full trade like your Empire State Editions books, what would you consider when thinking about that in-between discount between monographs and general?
I think the trade books really have their primary audience is through the trade, and they'll sell in the Barnes and Noble as well as Amazon, and then in the independent bookstores. When it's a book that sometimes editors say, oh, this is a trade book, but we know it's really academic, it's written in that way, it's got the methodology, it's got the footnotes and all of these things, and they're trying to push it into a market that really it shouldn't be in. So we categorize that as the academic trade. Sure, it may branch out because the topic is really interesting, and it may resonate. Like I said, that book about kinship and gay dads, sure, it's academic, it's written by a scholar, it's anthropological, it's based on 10 years of empirical research, but the topic is kind of interesting, and maybe there would be a market that someone would want to pick the book up at a B&N or order it on Amazon, but does it really need that full trade discount? Probably not. The academic trade will reach them enough. And as we all know, in trying to make a P&L statement work for a title, that trade discount really tips it over into a different scale. So that's how we determine it. But anyone else on the panel, feel free to chime in.
How does that academic trade discount work for you, Jeff, when you're looking at buying in titles?
I am very privileged to have a community that supports serious books, regardless of how a publisher might categorize it. And certainly, we can sell a book like that that was described as an academic title to a larger audience. And I think there are quite a few communities throughout the country that could do the same thing. Academic communities are filled with voracious, serious readers. And oftentimes that distinction is really a difficult one to make, and it's not entirely based upon anything objective. I think I would not want to be sitting in the seat of a university press director or sales force to try and make those decisions, because it's very complicated and very complex.
Great. All right, I have a question for Lanora. Lanora, should we distinguish the serious book from the monograph, or are they one and the same?
Well, they're obviously not one and the same, but I was going to say, since I'm a rep, I understand that publishers need to have the distinction for their marketing and promotion of the book, and that there are absolutely distinctions on which readers read those types of books. But since I'm on the sales side, I look at myself as a matchmaker, and I'm interested in selling the book to the right reader and to the right market. And so on my side, I'm not really distinguishing between the two as far as the sales go, because I just want to sell as many books as I can to the right people and make sure that that book gets the audience that it deserves. I'm cautious, especially in the Midwest, about framing the books as serious, because that seems elitist, and the impression is that the reader needs a higher level of cognitive focus to read them, and I don't think that's always the case, even for monographs. And I think that there is an opportunity there. So I'm interested on the sales side is framing the books just as the origin idea, and that regardless of how you guys classify it on your end, that these are all books that deserve to be read to the right person.
Right. Anyone else want to chime in on this question? Or I can move on to the next one. All right. Kurt, how do serious readers discover serious books?
Well, there's a lot of talk about discoverability in general, whether it's, more of the conversation now, I think, is about online, and having robust metadata that leads readers to books, that they might be interested in. How do you do that? You get the right keywords in copy, you get the right words and titles and subtitles so that search engines pick them up. But then, you know, more traditional ways, of course, of making books well-known, publicity. I mean, there's nothing better than a good review to get people running into a bookstore or going online to buy, for that matter. You know, and I think publishers can help in ways beyond sort of traditional publicity, advertising, marketing. Again, going back to metadata, making sure that you have the right data in place. It's not just for online bookstores, but also, you know, I think about our increasing use of electronic catalogs, like through Edelweiss, making sure you have the best information, most accurate information there to help booksellers and sales reps sell. You know, and sales, super important. Having a really good sales force that understands academic books. I think that's, I realize I'm drifting away from the actual end user, but I'm getting back there. You know, I think if bookstores can't find the kind of books that they can sell, you know, that's the big thing. And sales reps with experience selling academic books and serious trade, you know, it's hugely important. Also, having a diverse sales force, a sales force that can sell into niche markets and specialty markets. I think for university presses, you know, museum stores are so important, and national parks even. You know, I think about some of your regional books, Fred, you know, and how they can work in more specialized stores. But, you know, we've seen, I think we all have, a resurgence happily in sales through independent stores in the last few years. And they really, you know, everybody was predicting their demise 10 years ago, and they've really grown. And I think that's by engaging with their communities and making their stores relevant to those they serve. So, you know, author events, book discussions, any of those activities really help, I think, readers discover new content, serious content. You know, the bookstores in the end are engaging with the communities. They're really the curators of this content. So I think in the end, that's the key thing, is making sure we get the right books into bookstores that can sell our content, and then almost hand sell it to customers.
Good. Yeah, no, I think you made a good point, Kurt, regarding, you know, a lot of searches and the way people look for books are online. So I think really getting those keywords, the description about the book, you know, front and center, like your first statement about the book in the catalog copy should really just say what the book's about. You know, don't be creative and, you know, try to like overthink it. Just like say what the book's about, and then people can find it through those keywords. And I agree with you. I also think that independent bookstores is a resurgence. Even here in New York, there's 2 or 3 that opened. You know, Brooklyn is having a renaissance with independent bookstores. We recently worked together, Columbia, NYU, Fordham, SUNY, and Rutgers actually worked together to promote independent bookstores at the Brooklyn Book Festival. So we did this kind of giveaway. We had a map of all the independent bookstores in New York, and we said to the attendees, if you get a sticker from all the participating New York presses, you will be in a raffle to win free books from each press. And it was a really great way to promote independent bookstores, but also promote university press books and serious readers. So it was a great way to work as a community and collaborate and do this. And I think this could be mirrored in other you know, regional book festivals, whether it's Austin or Miami. So I think there's a lot that could be done. So I just wanted to emphasize those 2 points from my perspective. Does anyone else want to chime in on discovering serious books?
I'll say a word. I think publicity is definitely the key. I know that's how I often find books. And so we work really closely with Texas Public Radio and our NPR affiliate here, because we found that they will often want to cover some of our more serious books. And so we make a special effort working with them.
Great.
Yeah, I would just add to that, agree, and say, just as a sort of case in point, we represent Brookings. We distribute for Brookings and sell their titles in the U.S. And recently, you may have seen, they had a book on marijuana that got picked up by Fresh Air, and it just took off. And it's the kind of thing that, you know, then you use social media, obviously, to circulate that word even further. And it resulted in, you know, reprinting of quite a number of books and really good sales.
Yeah, and thanks. And I'll just add one more thing before we move on. The other key, I think, to building communities is the author. If the author is heavily involved with promotion and is out there, you know, we had a book that we did on a a poet, and Robert Lax, and the author was just pounding the pavement, setting up bookstore events, tapping into every network that he had. The book got reviewed all over the place, and it resulted in strong sales. So I think having the author tapped in really helps as well. So here's a question for you, Jeff. How do you create a community that appeals to the serious reader?
Great. Well, we know that a good bookstore should reflect the community it serves, but it's also true that we should be creating the community that we serve. And we have quite a few patrons that visit the bookstore looking for specific titles. We want to make sure that we have what those patrons are looking for. But what really distinguishes a great bookstore, I think, is the experience of browsing and how the bookstore supports that experience of browsing. So to think about curation, as was already mentioned, and what we do to be thoughtful in how we set out the titles, have a diverse set of titles that it might appeal to a diverse set of interests, and really both express and, again, help create the character of the community so that curation leads to an experience that can't be experienced elsewhere.
Great. Anyone else want to add to that? All right, I will move on to a question for Brady. Brady, what hopes do university presses have for monographs or serious books to be placed in bookstores, and what are your general expectations?
Well, I think that the expectations are good, but we have to be realistic. I think it depends on the book. Certainly, if it's a timely topic in the news, or if it's a book that has had some crossover success in terms of publicity, I think those are the types of books that we feel good about pitching and selling to bookstores. I think it's a case-by-case basis. Generally, independent bookstores, they're price sensitive, and you presses have to take that into consideration. So I think you have to be thoughtful, again, in what you are pitching or selling. So I think the expectations are to be realistic. Right.
And what would you consider a successful book, a trade book? What would you consider to be a success sales-wise, would you say? Does it vary depending on the subject, or?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, it does vary depending on the subject. Mm-hmm.
Right. Same for Fordham. Our regional books, the Empire State Edition books, tend to sell double or sometimes triple of what a scholarly book would sell, and that's pretty much has been the general rule of thumb. So I think that's good. Kurt, what's your opinion on the future of the monograph from a sales perspective?
Well, I think the issue is monographs are important and they'll always exist. The research monograph is important to students and scholars, but I think it's more the format question. I remember years ago when I was first working at Oxford, we could almost guarantee a pretty good number of books into institutions in the first year for a monograph. And now I would say that's probably less than half what we used to expect. This is on the print side. And a big reason for that is, the proliferation of online platforms, tightening library budgets. They don't have as much money as they would have had in the past to buy print, especially when there's an alternative that you can show usage stats for and show how it's being, the books are being used. I think that print is not going to go away. However, even though library budgets are tight, there are still wealthier institutions and institutions with important collections where they want the print, especially in what I've seen as humanities and social sciences, especially because I think STEM publishing is largely moving to electronic, at least on the monograph side, from what I've seen. But there are ways to work to make sure that print still exists, and I think ultra short run, which a lot of us publishers are using, and POD, print on demand, first are options that can keep the print monograph alive. And more publishers that I've worked are starting to work in that direction. But online platforms are, they work really well because you're looking at content alongside other relevant content, say journal articles or reference entries, and all this content is linked. With monographs, you don't necessarily need the whole book. You need a couple chapters of the book. So those aren't going away. And with budgets the way they are with libraries, I think that being able to show ROI and the fact that, the money they want for purchases is actually going somewhere, it's being used, and you can easily show that with electronic, it's making it increasingly difficult for print. But I think that, as I said, with the models that we now have, ultra short run and POD, print to order, print on demand, there's a way forward. But it's a much more difficult landscape now for print.
Right, and I think you're right. The library market has definitely taken a hit because of the multiple choices that they have, the different platforms that they can order their books from, and like you said that they can do their research, look for multiple monographs, read journal articles, and do all that stuff, whether it's on JSTOR, Muse, or UPSO, or whatever. But I think with the individual reader looking for a book, I think the ebook sales I think have plateaued or have gotten flat. Versus I know they had that spike for a number of years and everyone was getting nervous and print is dead. But then I think it plateaued, and now I think people are still reading books, the hard copy. And I don't know if anyone else agrees or has an opinion on this.
I could just say one more word on that. That's absolutely true. I mean, we're actually seeing a slight decline in ebook sales after years of astronomical growth, where everybody again was predicting the end of the print book. Everybody I talk to who's not in publishing, just readers, they still want print. So that's not going to go away. And it's just finding a model that works, I think. And hence the new technologies that should keep it alive. I mean, I don't think they're going to go away at all now.
Right.
For individual readers, yeah.
Anyone else want to add any thoughts to the print and versus the e? All right. Here's a question for Lanora. What advice do you have for university presses pitching series books to sales reps and buyers?
I think a lot of this has already been said, so I don't want to repeat what people are saying because people have some great ideas. I think that since I'm new, I'm from the trade side, I'm from the bookstore side, and now I'm on the sales rep side. What's interesting to me is I think that the university presses, at least that I'm dealing with, do a very good job of the publicity and marketing and pitching these books to the sales reps and to the media. But when it comes to some of the bookstores, I think that the university presses could do a better job building up their brand in and of itself. Like, this is an MIT book or this is a Fordham book, because each university press has their own unique style and niche in the market. And so I would love to see university presses build their relationships with bookstores a little bit stronger in certain ways. I mean, author events, absolutely, and other things that they can do. Talks, meeting with editors. There's all kinds of fun things that booksellers really like and that help them connect the book with the publisher or the editor and then the reader. And so I would love to see publishers doing a little bit more about really toting the idea that the conversation starts here. Join the community of people that want to be ahead of the mainstream and dig deeper into the ideas than anyone else, and have that kind of message coming from the press as a whole.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And, it's something that I often wondered, because coming from the inside, working in, university press publishing for a long time, I've always wondered, and Lenore, from your perspective, because you owned a bookstore and now you're selling university press books for 3 major university presses, do consumers, the general consumers, do they recognize a logo, like, oh, that's an MIT logo, that's a Fordham logo, that's a Princeton logo? Does it resonate with them? Or are they more interested in the topic? This is a cool book, I like this, or an author. I often wonder, does that press's imprint or logo really mean something to the general consumer? Or is that just an insidery thing? And Jeff, feel free to weigh in as well.
Yeah, a little of both. I mean, I had customers that definitely, I do think that university presses have influence. You see that logo on there and it gives it weight. If I'm, for a customer, if you're looking at a book on, let's say, sleep disorders, and you're looking at one from a big 5 publisher I won't name, and one from MIT, Yale, or Princeton, or any of your presses, that gives it more meaning, more weight. This is a book that's actually going to give me the real information. I think it does help with the booksellers too. Booksellers are, it's more insider, but they're hyper aware of where books are coming from and who's publishing them and getting behind certain imprints and certain editors. So that helps them hand sell the book to the customer who may not be aware of the brand. So.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's totally true about how bookstores see it, and that we might be more inclined to, if there are half a dozen books on the same topic, we might pick based on the imprint because we trust it, we know the editors, and we believe that it's serious. But I think most readers are looking at the author and the topic and browsing the book itself, and that really is the most critical piece. And it's easy for us to forget that when we are kind of in the bubble that we live in, but most readers don't have an experience or a brand relationship, quote unquote, with a particular publisher.
Great, thanks. Jeff, for you, how does your bookstore, Seminary, promote the serious book in the community?
Yeah, well, we ask the question of what is a serious reader, and I think the answer is really all of us, all readers, at one point or another, most of them anyway, are interested in serious books, and we might have a little bit more of a focus on serious books as a whole, as a store. But really the qualities that we think about, curiosity, intelligence, sophistication, adventurousness, attentiveness, things like that, those are qualities that we try and build into the curation of the store, but also the programming. We, as well as I think most of the people on this panel and most university presses, we really see ourselves as a cultural institution. And while we have a cash register in our building, we're really a cultural institution. And one of the things that we do to bring this out into the community is, as was already mentioned, we do some events. We support over 350 events per year. And we try and bring those experiences that one might have in the store out to the wider world. Things like dialogue, communion, understanding, confrontations with the beautiful, the serious, the sublime, things like that. We try and bring those to our events and have them on some level embrace those qualities in the world. And then one other thing that was actually brought to my attention recently by one of our authors is one of the authors of the University of Chicago, who's published with more than half a dozen university presses. He made a comment that we sell books to those that write books, and recognizing that all writers are readers and all serious writers are serious readers. We think about that quite a bit and do our best to curate a selection that would both surprise and delight even the most experienced academic or intellectual, as much as it would for the reader that's a more casual reader.
Good, great. Thank you, Jeff. Anyone else? All right. This one's for Brady. What are successful ways your press promotes the serious book in the community? Maybe give some examples of how you partner with local organizations, businesses, those kind of examples.
Sure. Well, we partner regularly with our independent bookstores here in Austin, but we also look for other opportunities. I mentioned earlier the local NPR and PBS affiliates. We do underwriting with them, but we also partner with them on things like their membership drives and other events. There are organizations here like the Austin Film Society. We partner with them, and they're a big fan of our film and media books, which are mainly scholarly. We're working with them on a fundraiser right now for their new theater. They wanted to put packages together and include 10 of our film and media books. So that's a great way to kind of get your books out into the community. The Texas PBS stations across the state, they have a book club. And they have featured a number of our books, and those are not just trade, but also scholarly books. On campus, we do an online book sale just for the UT campus, and that's a great way, again, on your home turf to get the word out about your books. So those are just a few examples.
Great, thanks, Brady. Yeah, at Fordham, we try to partner with some of our cultural institutions. We've done co-publications with the Bronx Museum of the Arts. We've actually done a lot of events with them. They're very good friends and partners of the press. We've done stuff with the Hudson River Museum, co-publications, catalogs for their exhibitions. So those are a couple examples of how we've worked with local institutions. And just on campus itself, we have tried to run some publishing seminars for our junior scholars and recent PhD students on how to publish. Like, how do you publish with a university press? Because I think it can be a scary thing for them. So we kind of invite outside editors from different university presses or journals and kind of explain the process of how you get your work published. So those are kind of some of the ways that we've worked here at Fordham. Any other anyone want to comment on working with local communities and institutions? Okay, and I also mentioned the book festivals, which are a great way to work with your community as well. So before I open it up to our audience, I just want to end it with this question for the group. What can university presses do to work better with bookstores? And I think, because independent bookstores are so important and so important to university presses, that I think if we could work together, I think it'd be great. And I mentioned, just kind of promoting it from the New York perspective and working with our other university presses and promoting indies. We have a series of events at Book Culture, which is near Columbia. We have an event that's taking place tomorrow, and it's with Columbia University Press and Fordham, and inviting people to discuss how to get published. And so, again, Book Culture is another fan of university presses, and we're trying to do our part to work with them and set up a series of events on a regular basis. So each season we have 2 or 3 author events, and I'd like to do more of that with other independent bookstores in New York. So that's I think just partnering with the bookstore, and I think the audience, the readers of these books likes that face-to-face interaction. We don't need to do online for everything. Let's do some more face-to-face, people events, and I think indies are great for that. So that's my take on it. Why don't we turn it over to Brady, and you give us your take on that.
Well, I couldn't agree more. We partner with our local bookstores, as I mentioned. We do a number of events throughout the year, and we're always on site to help and pitch in any way that we can. I think meeting face-to-face, as you just mentioned, regularly, talking with the booksellers in the bookstores, finding out what they're interested in, what their needs are. I think having those conversations on a regular basis is really, really important. And I think when you or your sales team goes in to pitch books, I think, again, being really thoughtful about what you are selling or pitching and identifying maybe 1 or 2 academic books that would really fit into that particular store, I think is one thing that I would recommend. But everything else that you mentioned, Fred, I would agree with.
Great, thanks. Jeff, do you want to add anything from your perspective as a bookseller?
I would add that great books are great books, and it's important that we're thinking of books on some sort of an equal playing ground. So, if a major trade publisher has a book on a similar topic, and we're making decisions based off of discounts and margins and things like that, it's really important that there's a competitive approach that the university presses have. I also think there's a creativity that we see sometimes from a trade house that we might not see as much from a university press because they might not see us as the primary focus. I see library and specialty markets as a more of a focus, and that to be a little bit more creative and recognize that the books could do really well if featured with promotion or other interesting ideas that might not come up the university presses in general.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Kurt, do you want to add your 2 cents?
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add. I pretty much agree with everything that I've been hearing. I especially agree with what Brady said about, finding the right book for the right bookstore. I think that with all the regional publishing that university presses traditionally do, it's a great opportunity to work with the community on books that have relevance to them, and partnering with a bookstore to for an event, whether it's an author event or discussion. I think that's a great way to go.
Great. And so, Lanora, what's your opinion on this?
I think everybody had some really great, I'd like to second what everybody said, but especially Jeff, because there are some more creative ways, I think, that university presses can work with bookstores that a lot of the big trade publishers do. Something as small as a handwritten note with a galley from the editor itself can push that book to the top of a bookseller's pile and establish a relationship with them, and then that hand selling happens naturally. So I think there are a lot of creative ways that university presses are missing out on a little bit with partnering with their bookstores beyond just author events or panels. And one of the most powerful things that I did in my previous life was I was on a focus group for a particular publisher and looked at books ahead of time to even comment on the jackets, comment on the content of the book and how it would be positioned in the market and how I could sell it for them. And they took that feedback and did from all the booksellers, and I think it made some successful books. So there's all kinds of things. There's room to grow, but mostly that's my job as a sales rep, and I hope that most sales reps see it that way, because it's my job to really create that connection and that community between the bookstore and the university press.
Great. Thanks, Lanora. Thanks, everyone. So we have about 15 minutes or so left, and I think that's about the amount of time we wanted to devote to the audience questions. And I see one that has come up, and so why don't I start with that? It's Mike Spinney asked, what is the biggest threat to print's future, and are there any technology, strategies, innovations the panel feels can continue the rebound? It's an interesting question. Does anyone want to start with an answer for that one?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I want to answer the strategy that we can use. I think that really doubling down on production quality is critical, and thinking about how university presses might try and make ends meet. I understand that needs to happen, but one of the reasons those books are so enduring is because they're beautifully made, beautifully produced, beautifully written. There's a slowness to it that is not really in vogue right now in our culture and in our society, and I don't think that that's going to go away. I think these ideas have endured for centuries, and they will continue to endure. And if we abandon the things that kind of fuel our values, then there's really not much left to preserve. So I would say keep doing what you're doing, and do it with the conviction that might not seem to resonate currently in our culture.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, I would just add to that, as I said when we were talking about monograph sales and the future of the monograph, that that I totally get Jeff's point about production quality and the value of that. But the technologies have improved just tenfold over the last couple of years, and what's being done with print-on-demand technology now and color and bindings, it's just light years ahead of where we were when this all started 15, 20 years ago. If it's been that long, I'm not sure, maybe 15 years ago, really POD took off. So I think there are ways to, for certain types of books like the monograph, to keep them in print and not sacrifice too much on the quality side of, physical quality. And then, I don't think print's going away. As I said earlier, monographs, yes, it's diminished in the numbers you can get out due to the factors that we discussed. But general trade books and academic trade books, people want the print, I think. And so I think we all worried a few years ago that this was going to be a bigger problem than it's turned out to be. And as Fred pointed out earlier, ebook sales are, flat or even on the decline.
Yeah, and I think maybe it's not a technology, and maybe it's obvious, but I think just discoverability of our books, our university press books, and being smart in how we deliver our data to the ether, to the world, and doing it right, and not having to go back and fix things. Because once something's out there, whether it's a price, whether it's a title, the author, you want to make sure that you get the information right, you get the right words out there, the right description out there, so that people discover these books, and then you're not changing it later. Oh, I made a mistake, and then it's out there, and then it's so hard to fix it in all these different places, all these different outlets, and people discover books in so many different ways. So I think discoverability is probably a great way to make your books known and to get print sales out there. So that's my take. Lanora, Brady, do you have anything you want to add to that question?
Well, I think that sums it up.
I think so. I mean, as was mentioned earlier, I mean, we've seen the ebook sales sort of level off, and independent bookstores coming back strong. I mean, we can't rest on our laurels, though. So I think we have to, keep, with our missions and everything, we have to always keep that in mind, what we do. Great.
No, it was a good question. I have another one that just came in from Greg Britton from Hopkins. What can an author do to help each of you do your job? Or from the publisher's perspective, how can we coach authors to help you? And I think that's a good question. And authors, as I mentioned earlier, I think are a critical component of the publicity campaign, the marketing campaign. I mean, obviously they've written the book and they've done a great job and they've invested heavily in that book, but they just can't just deliver it to the publisher and then just step back and say, okay, sell my book, market my book, publicize my book, and then do absolutely nothing for that book. And I've had both, and I've had the author who's done absolutely nothing and then comes back and complains, why is my book sold? Then I have the author who is the complete opposite, could be, royal pain and high maintenance, but the book does really, really well. They're out there, every contact they know, whether they're in the media, print, electronic, and they're just using all of their friends, all of their networks, and bugging the crap out of them, but they're getting results, they're getting reviews, they're getting interviews, they're getting radio interviews, they're getting bookstore events. We love those authors, and those types of authors actually help us, and they sell books. So you get them out there, and you can do that by, what we do is we send them a letter when the catalog is ready. This is what you can do for your book. Whether it's, going into your local bookstore, making sure they have copies, setting up an event, going to Amazon and having all their friends write reviews. Those are just two small examples, but we have a page of examples, and we send them off to our authors with the catalog. So that's what we do. I don't know.
I have a novel suggestion for you. Have your authors pay attention to the author questionnaire.
Yeah.
Really fill it out diligently and make sure all those contacts that you mentioned are in there, all the potentials for publicity and review. That is like the key document. And then also listen to sales and marketing when there are comments made on your title selection. And you love that title. The author loves a certain title, but it's a terrible title. Listen to sales and marketing about that. Going back to the discoverability,
I want to second Kurt on that, because a lot of the people on the sales side really know or have a lot of experience in how the book looks, how it looks on the shelf, the titling, the subtitle. Those are all things authors should definitely listen to and not get too enamored with the idea of how to sell their book, because the people on the sales side have been doing it for a long time, and we know how to make your book stand out on the shelf and on those tables. And so if you're flexible, we can help you sell more books.
Great. Anyone else want to contribute?
I would just add, I feel similarly to what you said, Fred. We collaborate with our authors. That's the way we like to think of it. And we also send a letter when the catalog comes out. And many times we've already had conversations with our authors. But we came up with sort of a separate guide for here's what you can do for your book and with your book. Like, here are some things you can do on social media, if you have social media, and we give really specific examples. We provide them with what they need, the book cover or other materials from the book if they're interested. So we like to really give them everything and kind of lay it out. And most of them are very receptive. Some, aren't always, but.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. And I had an author who published with a couple of trade houses, and she said that her experience with a university press was so much more pleasant and enjoyable, and we're getting her next book too. So I think we treat our authors. I tend to think we treat our authors really well, and we do work with them, and we do collaborate with them. So I think that's important. The one thing I would advise an author is don't have your friend design the cover. We get that all the time. Say, "Oh, my friend's a graphic designer, and they did this cover," and we're like, "Oh no, no." So
I think I've seen some of those, Fred.
What's that?
I think I've seen some of those in the early stages.
Yeah. So Greg, if you're listening, I'm sure you've been involved with that. That's one way an author can help a publisher. Try not to design the cover. I don't see any other questions out there. Anyone have any parting thoughts or comments they want to add? We have a few minutes before the end of our session. Nope. Great. Well, I think we can end a few minutes early. Thank you, everyone. This I thought was really useful and beneficial session, and it was really nice to get perspective from various areas of university press publishing, from a bookstore to a rep to a distributor to a publisher. So I just want to thank you all for participating.
Thanks for moderating, Fred.
Sure. Despite the slight technical difficulties this morning, we were able to pull it off. So that's great. And thanks to the AAUP and to John Michael for helping us coordinate this. It was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mhm.